Hey movie fans! Today I have yet another special guest. This one you may have actually heard of though. Who are you?
I am CaptainZach of CaptainZach616 at WordPress.com.
So today we will be competing, once again, not really competing, but debating on copycats. Now Zach, what do I mean by copycats?
Copycat is where one company has the idea before the other, and the other basically replicates the idea in their own universe.
Starting us off at number 10 is Dr. Doom from the Fantastic Four and Lex Luthor from Superman. Now at first you wouldn't really think that these are really copycats, but they are more alike than you would like to think. Zach, why is that?
Well, Dr. Doom and Lex Luthor are both these very rich, very powerful figures that have their own land, so to speak. Lex Luthor has his own island, which has sort of sketchy chemical things going on, and Dr. Doom has Latveria, his own country, where it's illegal for anyone from the outside to cross over due to international law.
Yet, both of them are megalomaniacs that really want to just control everything. But Doc Doom tends to rely more on the power spectrum. He builds his own machines, he has, I believe he has flight, right? He builds like boots. Whereas Lex Luthor tends to be more, let other people play for him. He's the chess master. He will move pieces strategically. As was evident in Smallville, he was very much a methodical guy, not more of a physical guy, whereas Dr. Doom is.
Well, Dr. Doom still sends out his minions. They're just robot clones of himself. The Doombots are kind of the running joke of the Fantastic Four, because every time they catch Dr. Doom, it turned out to be a Doombot.
But both of them, while they originally started off kind of similar, they've distinguished each other enough that readers can tell them apart, as is evident with a lot of these characters. At number 9, we have Deathstroke the Terminator, Slade Wilson, and Deadpool, Wade Wilson. Now, other than the names, the similarities very much diverge, but there's enough to be considered copycat-esque. Zach, what do I mean by that?
Well, at the beginning, it's easy to forget that Deadpool was not originally an anti-hero. We love the Deadpool that breaks the fourth wall and has these funny banters with the other characters, but that's not how he started. He started as a villain. And if you look at even his color spectrum at the time, Deadpool's color spectrum was an exact mimic of Deathstroke's. Now, since Deathstroke has moved on to more blue colors and things like that, but at the beginning, it was a very obvious, this is Deathstroke in our universe as a villain kind of mentality of Marvel.
Whereas Deadpool now is more humor, Deathstroke is no humor whatsoever. If you watch the show Arrow, I believe that this Deathstroke is one of the best iterations of the characters we've ever gotten. He's no nonsense, I'm very physical, I'll beat you down. Both of them are mercenaries, though, with Deathstroke working time to time with the Suicide Squad, but not being a permanent member. Deadpool, he's basically the best assassin in the Marvel Universe, and I actually believe he killed the Marvel Universe.
He did kill the Marvel Universe. I'm not sure if that is canon in the main universe, but he did kill everyone, including the writers.
Before, Deathstroke was more just a rugged anti-hero. Not even anti-hero, he was just a villain to the Teen Titans. Now he's becoming more of the sympathetic character, so he's starting to get a little bit more Deadpool, but he will never be cracking puns, never breaking the fourth wall, because no DC character breaks the fourth wall. We're not that fun. Number 8, we have the one that gets a lot of people up in arms. Justice League or the Avengers. Now this one isn't so much a copycat as DC did have the idea first, but the idea of the Justice League seeped into more than just the Avengers. What other Marvel franchises were based off the Justice League idea?
Well, we have the Defenders, which was a group of pre-established heroes that came together as one. Numerous other hero groups have formed, the Heroes for Hire and other groups such as that took established characters and put them in the same group and gave them a running line of story. That is not a specifically Avengers idea. It kind of reverberates across the entire universe.
Marvel has a lot of team-ups, whereas DC is basically Justice League or bust. Now we have a lot of different Justice Leagues. We have Justice League of America, Justice Society, but only the ones people care about are Justice League, unless you're a diehard comic book fan. Stan Lee also was a huge fan of the Justice League, and that's why we have so many team-ups in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or just the Marvel comic universe. Mm-hmm. This was most evident actually in the Fantastic Four. Fantastic Four came more of a family approach to Justice League and wanted to have the first family in comics. Most people will say that they base their love and affection on the Avengers, primarily because we've seen them on a big screen. Mm-hmm. But being a DC fan, this is a little bit hard for me because most people have not read a comic book. That's not their fault. but they like Avengers more because they're more familiar with Avengers.
And something to note with the Avengers versus the Justice League is that the teams themselves, how they function, are very different because of the roster that they include. You know, eventually you get into the Martian Manhunter Vision crossover, or Hawkeye Green Arrow, but you have Iron Man, who is not the same as Superman as a leader, or you have the characters are not the same as each other. So the idea is the same, but the way the teams behave is not.
And with the characters and their dynamics, there are some similarities. You have a billionaire who doesn't get along with the American Patriot with Batman and Superman, or Iron Man and Captain America. You have your android with Martian Manhunter or Vision. The whole interesting dynamics, but by and large, these characters and teams have made themselves distinguished enough. At number 7, we have one that's not really a copycat, but for the general audience that doesn't read comics, this one definitely will seem very much like a copycat. And that is Flash and Quicksilver. Now Flash, he's got a new reputation now with his TV show, with an upcoming movie starring Ezra Miller, a person being a wallflower, and Quicksilver is the son of Magneto, not that they said that in Days of Future Past. Spoiler alert? Now why do people at first glance think that they're the same person, just copycatted?
The speed aspect, the idea that you can move faster than your eye can catch, is very much a similar superpower that is more known of Flash. So when Quicksilver came along, it seemed like it was the same thing, especially to people who did not read the comics.
Now what's the main difference between the two?
The main difference is just about everything but their ability. Quicksilver was originally established as a villain, and he is very rarely seen outside the context of with his sister. This character has the same superpower as Flash, but beyond that, there's very little that he shares.
I'd also say that Flash got his powers, whereas Quicksilver was born with them. The main difference, however, is Flash deals more with time travel than Quicksilver does. Now, Quicksilver, in the newer comics, does have some time travel ability, but Flash's relies a lot of his story on the element of time travel. Hence why we have the New 52, because of some going back in time, Back to the Future, alternate timeline type of thing.
The Flash is a more well-known character. His TV show is more watched, and you generally think of him first when you think of the super speed ability. That being said, Quicksilver is holding his own in 2 upcoming movies, and the characters have taken very different routes over their careers.
Also, on the counter end of that, seeing Quicksilver Days of Future Past makes me confident in a good Flash movie further down the road if they do something along those lines. Just not copycatting. Hey! At number 6 is the first time that Marvel had an idea before DC did. But boy, did we rip it off, and rip it off big time. What is it?
That is Killer Croc and the Lizard.
Oh boy, we really ripped this one off. Like, sue DC for plagiarism bad. So, Killer Croc is this gigantic brute, Waylon Jones. It's this gigantic crocodile man. Now, Lizard is what?
Lizard created his own ability to become a lizard in an attempt to regain a lost arm. Originally, this was one of Spider-Man's first villains within the first 20 issues. He lived in Florida, and he had lost an arm, and he was trying to regrow it, which actually turned him into a lizard. Spider-Man traveled down to Florida to fight the lizard, and defeated him, cured him, although, of course, in comics, would not cure for long.
Now, we have seen the Lizard in movies before. We saw him in The Amazing Spider-Man. Killer Croc has yet to get a big screen movie, while we have seen him in the Arkham games that have been highly successful, which that is a perfect venue for him. He's a good video game character. Even as a DC fan, I will say that the Lizard is by far more interesting character than Killer Croc. The Lizard has more of a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde approach of Kirk Connors is one of the nicest and kind humans, but once he goes into lizard mode, he's a completely different person. It's like the Hulk. Whereas Killer Croc, he's just a bulking powerhouse that can destroy anything that gets in his way. The most interesting thing that has ever happened to Killer Croc is getting his arms broken by Bane.
That being said, we still have the chief difference of Killer Croc was born this way, while the Lizard goes back and forth. He did it to himself, and he does it to himself again. So, sort of the same difference as Flash and Quicksilver, of is it origin or is it because I influenced it?
At number 5, we have one of my favorite ones to debate, Hulk versus Doomsday. Now, if you don't know who Doomsday is, hopefully we'll get him in a movie at some point and he will wreck house. Doomsday is the single most powerful thing in the DC universe. He's the thing that killed Superman. Yes, Superman has died. Why do people get these two confused if they know who they are?
you have the super strength idea of both characters. They're hulking masses that are basically unstoppable to anything in front of them. Visually, they look the same. Granted, Doomsday has more spikes. And also there's the destruction aspect, the idea that whatever stops them will even make them stronger. That Hulk, the angrier he gets, the stronger he gets. And Doomsday will not die the same way twice. He'll come back stronger. And it's sort of the same concept of, if you try and stop it, you're really not going to be able to stop it in the long run.
It's also the same thing that we just brought up with Lizard Killer Croc. Hulk is two parts. He's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Doomsday, on the other hand, is an alien wrecking machine bent on utter destruction. A lot of people like to debate who would win, Superman or Hulk, which, hands down, Hulk would win because he'd keep getting powered up until he eventually beat Superman. The question is, for me, who would win? Hulk versus Doomsday, because that's a more compelling fight to me. I would make the case that Hulk wins round 1 after a good, hard fight. But round 2, it would be a matter of immovable force meets an unstoppable object, because Doomsday cannot die to the same thing twice, whereas Hulk, he'll keep getting stronger the angrier he gets. So neither of these two would be able to kill each other. To the casual person, they seem like they could be a little bit alike, but once again, as we've seen in a recurring theme, they distinguish each other enough that they're their own characters, despite the fact that, once again, Marvel came first with this character, whereas Doomsday, he's actually, in retrospect, a newer character. Now we're going to one that has a lot more similarities than any that we've encountered before. This is Robin and Bucky. Explain.
Well, these are two of the oldest characters on the list. These were both debuting in the 1940s, which is far older than most of your comic characters coming in the 60s. Robin and Bucky were both the boy wonder type looks of, you have the big, strong hero, and then you have a sidekick around here. It was very much a boyish character that was an add-on to the strong, buff, jacked man.
And these characters were originally created to get younger viewers reading comics, and for a while there, it worked. But these similarities kept going for quite a few years. Even when these characters reached adulthood, their similarities kind of stayed the same for quite a while. What I mean by that is the very first Robin to which we're referring, Dick Grayson, grew up to be my personal favorite, Nightwing, whereas Bucky grew up to be the Winter Spoiler.
Yes, you sort of have this also rebellious character that acknowledges his origin of this other hero and kind of makes his own route. Granted, he's always in the Captain America titles, but he is not necessarily the sidekick anymore.
They've made their own way as their own heroes, and they've had their own comics, I believe.
Winter Soldier has had his own comic series.
What is most fascinating, though, in these similarities is that both of these sidekicks eventually took up the mantle of their mentor at some point, with Nightwing taking the place of Batman when Batman died at the hands of Darkside. And what happened to Cap?
When Captain America died at the end of the Civil War. Spoilers.
Possibly.
I have articles on that.
Check them out.
Yes, but also when these characters, when Robin moves on, or when Bucky dies back in the 40s, you also have the hero who replaces them. How many different Robins have we had?
Off the top of my head, I could think of 5.
You could think of 5?
I could think of 5.
And obviously, right off the bat, we have Rick Jones, who tried to replace Bucky in the early editions of Captain America. So you also have this concept of, once the character moves on, they try and find someone basically the same to kind of come alongside and replace that character under the same general name. Of course, the biggest difference, as far as I see, is that Winter Soldier was one of the best films of 2014. Well, when's that Nightwing movie coming?
I'll tell you when. Never! We may get him on Arrow, but that's about it!
Moving on.
Okay, so we've had the best sidekicks, and now we move on to gods. We're swinging for the fences with this one. Stick them right next to each other, and you're not going to be able to tell the difference if you don't know the characters. Darkside and Thanos. Now these two are basically the uber gods of their universes and can easily destroy whatever gets in their way. Why do people get these two confused?
They're both these incredibly powerful, incredibly dangerous beings that at one point or another have held almost absolute power, that are obsessed with death. Thanos, the physical manifestation of death, he tries to court on numerous occasions, and Darkseid, the idea of death, he greatly loves and pursues.
From a costume standpoint, they also look very similar to the casual moviegoer or comic book reader of not anything extravagant, but looks like a tyrannical warlord with very bland colors. Easily, both of these can take down their respective superhero teams, with Darkseid constantly fighting the Justice League, and Thanos constantly taking on the Avengers. Now, we have seen Thanos in 2 movies now, with Guardians of the Galaxy and his first appearance in Avengers. That's that guy that you all Googled who he was at the end of the movie, but pretended to know for your best friends. I'm calling you out now. I was that guy too. Whereas Darkseid,
we saw him on Smallville.
We saw a smoke cloud in Smallville. We have seen him in some animated series, like the highly acclaimed Justice League animated series back in the early 2000s, and he was also in Justice League War, which was the first DC animated movie set in the New 52. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him in this new DC Cinematic Universe. I'm hoping that it won't be until Justice League 2 at earliest, but knowing DC's rush mentality, he's going to be in Justice League 1.
We will have to see on that. Time will tell.
I am a little bit worried when we do eventually get Darkseid in a film, because I think a lot of moviegoers that have seen Thanos in action in an Avengers movie will just think that DC's ripping off that idea, even though I do believe Darkseid came first, and these characters are distinct enough that there shouldn't be any confusion, but for the general audience, this could be confusing when that day comes that we see Darkseid in all of his bad glory.
I, as a Marvel fan, will be one of the first to admit that this idea, this character himself, was basically a replicant of Thanos, or of Darkseid from the DC universe.
Well, that was a big ripoff. This is arguably one of the biggest. Black Cat and Catwoman. DC has a tendency to have the idea first, but Marvel takes it and makes it better, where we DC people kind of get stuck in that same mentality and keeping them one-dimensional.
And you reboot.
Yes. Oh my goodness, those reboots. What do we mean by Black Cat and Catwoman basically being rip-offs? Okay, I'm going to describe one of these characters to you, and you tell me which one it is. A strong female character dressed in all black that seduces the hero, but you don't know what side of the fence she's on, whether good or bad, and she does things for her own good.
That would be Catwoman. Black Cat has some white.
Oh, I would also make the argument that both Black Cat and Catwoman love this superhero that they love, but they don't love their alter egos.
Excellent, yes. Black Cat has on numerous occasions declared love for Spider-Man while suggesting that he abandoned the idea of Peter Parker. This presents Peter Parker with the idea of, do I go for MJ, Peter's love, or do I go for Black Cat, Spider-Man's love? And it's kind of a, which am I, the hero or the alternate ego?
Now, we have seen Catwoman in movies. This is one of the few places we have you beat. We have seen 3 versions of Catwoman, because I'm not counting that one with Halle Berry. We have seen the live-action Catwoman in that 1960s Batman movie. We have seen the Michelle Pfeiffer version in that questionable Tim Burton Batman Returns movie, which has its legions of fans, but it still scares the crap out of me.
I enjoyed it.
It's still very disturbing. It's more Burton than it is Batman. And we've seen arguably one of the better versions with Anne Hathaway's Catwoman in the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy. I do believe that at some point we will get Black Cat. Why is that?
If Sony continues with their universe, which is up in the air right now if the Sinister Six movie is even going to happen or not. It's been postponed, but will be postponed indefinitely. We did see a Felicia, which may or may not be the Felicia Hardy that becomes Black Cat, in the Amazing Spider-Man 2. She was one of the things that was shoehorned in. You may not have noticed her next to the other things that were shoehorned in.
Oh, there were shoehorned things in Amazing Spider-Man 2? Well, movie fans, comic book fans, we've made it this far. What is the most blatant ripoff in all of comics? It is by far Marvel ripping off Green Arrow with Hawkeye. But, well, let's be fair, Hawkeye has been in some movies, whereas Green Arrow hasn't, except Green Arrow's been portrayed well.
The characters are very, very similar. They are archery-based heroes who both have bird-related girlfriends. If you look at Hawkeye's girlfriend, Mockingbird, who's currently in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and if you look at the Black Canary, who's currently in Arrow, they are very similar. Even their costumes are almost overlaps. Their weaponry is almost overlaps. Which leads me, originally I say that archery is not necessarily belonging just to DC, but once you look at the girlfriends, once you look at much of their character, they're basically the same thing existing in two universes.
The big distinguishing factor in a lot of people's minds is that Hawkeye has been portrayed on the big screen and Arrow has been subjected to the small screen. For now. With Arrow being so popular, I wouldn't be surprised if Warner Brothers tries to capitalize on this and put him in the cinematic universe at some point. The main distinguishing factor, though, in my mind, is that Arrow has had 3 seasons to develop this character. Hawkeye, on the other hand, has been in 2 movies because I'm counting his appearance in Thor, although the credits don't. His appearance in Avengers really did not do justice to the character. I make fun of Hawkeye a lot because he was terrible in Avengers. I don't blame Jeremy Renner, I blame not enough screen time and not making him heroic. He was basically Loki's assistant. I'm hoping this is different, and I have faith it will be for Age of Ultron. Now, this won't be the last time we see Hawkeye after Age of Ultron. Why is that?
Well, Hawkeye has actually signed on for 3 films, as very recently discussed by Jeremy Renner. In fact, I have a whole article about which characters have which amount of contract lengths still in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
I'll put a link for that in the description below. There's going to be a lot of links. It's going to be a lot of fun after this. As much as we DC fans like to bag on Marvel for stealing our ideas and making them better, we kind of have ourselves to blame for not making our own characters better. We have to face the facts and look at ourselves in the mirror. We kind of stole this idea ourselves. We stole the idea of Green Arrow from Robin Hood. He's really a Robin Hood ripoff in and of himself.
In fact, Hawkeye has actually taken this farther away from Robin Hood, almost making him more of an original character, despite being very much a replicant of Green Arrow.
What do you guys think? What are some of the biggest ripoffs in comics and movies that you've seen that you think we left off the list? Well, where can we find you?
I'm at CaptainZach616 at WordPress.com. The link should be in the description below. I have lots of articles about modern Marvel movies, and I bring comic background to those movies.
I actually wrote a little bit on his blog. We teamed up for this. This was a collaboration on both ends. He agreed to show up on my channel as me appearing on his blog. So definitely go check that out.
In fact, this list is Movie Guy's specific list. I have my own list of copycats, which are extremely different than his. In fact, my number 1 does not appear on this list.
Make sure you check that out, as well as some other content that both of us have, his blog and my channel. If you want to see all the videos, subscribe to my channel. Or you can find me on Facebook at MovieGuy17 or on Twitter at NMovieGuy17. Stay sharp, movie guys and gals.